People have asked, why Auburn? Why Auburn Manufacturing for the president's visit? Well, the answer may seem obvious to myself and the rest of Team Auburn that work with Kathy, as well as numerous other businesses in Auburn every single day. But to a lot of other people, it's not. So I'd like to answer that question now. Auburn has proactively practiced bottom-up economics now for years. We've eliminated outdated and burdensome regulations and fees, conducted one of the nation's most comprehensive zoning reform initiatives, eliminated barriers to success, facilitated the building of hundreds of new workforce housing units, and more importantly, put our support and our belief behind individuals and their entrepreneurial spirit. Auburn Manufacturing is a great example of that spirit that thrives throughout our city. And while there's more work to be done at the local, state, and national level, I'm looking forward to working with our partners, most of which are here today, in order to accomplish our mutual goals, making America's manufacturing sector better than ever before. And Mr. President, I have a feeling he's listening right now. If any city or town doubts that the best days of American manufacturing are behind us, have them call Kathy or myself. We'll set them straight. We might have been knocked down, but we got back up in a big way. And as I like to say, and hopefully all of you like to say after today, as goes Auburn, so goes the nation. So today, please join me in welcoming and supporting the 46th President of the United States, President Joe Biden. And I'd be a little remiss if I also didn't say, well, let's welcome Congresswoman Pingree, Congressman Golden, Senator Angus King, and of course, Governor Janet T. Mills. So they're all here today, and they're all excited to celebrate Auburn Manufacturing. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Representative Jared Golden.
Good afternoon. It's a good day for a helicopter ride. Enjoyed it. There is a political narrative being forced upon us that does not reflect who we are as a people. The narrative goes that there are two political parties in America, one led by socialists, supported by a mass of crazy liberals coming after your way of life. The other led by fascists, supported by racist, authoritarian-minded conservatives. The self-interested forces benefiting from political division and social chaos who are behind this narrative want us to choose between party affiliation and colleagues at work, between party identity and lifelong friends, between party loyalty and members of our very own family. For most of us, it's a choice between one part of ourselves and another. For inside most of us are the roots of both a progressive and a conservative. Thankfully, President Biden is not the type of leader that wants to force this divisive choice upon us. Instead, he's a president who believes in the good character of normal American people. And there are more normal people than the weirdos out there would have us believe. The normal people who prefer a choice between political parties led by people of good character, who will pursue normal goals. It's no secret that I don't always agree with or vote for President Biden's agenda. But when I look at the accomplishments and long-term economic goals of the first 2 years of his presidency, what I see is the beginnings of a challenge to the dismantling of our national economy that left American workers exposed to foreign competition and allowed American manufacturing power to drift overseas in pursuit of globalization. Beginning with a historic investment in America's infrastructure and new laws to support manufacturing jobs on American soil, bolstered by an alliance with unions to ensure that American workers are protected and can earn a middle-class living, Bidenomics lays the foundation for a new America First economic agenda that I can proudly support. Thank you, President Biden. Thank you, President Biden, for coming to Maine's 2nd Congressional District to highlight the twin cities of Auburn and Lewiston, and for recognizing Kathy Leonard and the talented workers at Auburn Manufacturing who are doing their part to make sure that the things that America needs most are made right here in America and in Auburn, Maine. Next up, I get to introduce someone that you all know well, because he's been in your lives for a long time. He served you well for many, many years. He's someone that I've known since my days in high school when he was governor of Maine. It's someone that I've known when I was just out of the Marines and in his classroom where he was a guest lecturer at Bates College, and he's someone I know as a colleague today, and someone I admire and look up to, Senator Angus King. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've never waited to speak before amidst a big set of rolls of heat-proof textiles. That was the oddest waiting room I've ever been in. The president is going from Maine this evening back down to Delaware to a cottage on Rehoboth Beach. I was going to invite him to Reed State Park or Popham, but I think the problem would be he'd be so disappointed when he went back to Delaware. I mean, it would ruin it for him. It would just ruin it for him. It's wonderful to be back here. I've been here, and usually the machines are going, and I just have to tell you that flying up from Washington on Air Force One is pretty cool. Now he's ruined American Airlines for me, you know. But in thinking about coming up here and talking about manufacturing and where we are, we're in an amazing place in the economy of the United States and the economy of Maine. Now, I like charts and graphs, but I couldn't do it here. You know, they wouldn't let me have big graphs, so I'm going to be the graph. You ready? Okay. Incomes up. GDP up substantially in the last, we just learned yesterday, at a much higher, GDP growing at a much higher rate than was expected. Inflation down, under 3%. Unemployment down, the lowest in Maine in 50 years. The lowest in Maine in 50 years. And that hurts me to say because there was this thing about being governor 20 years ago. I tell Janet Mills she's the best governor of Maine in the last 20 years. But we're 2.4%. In fact, I told the president coming up here, our biggest problem economically as inflation comes down is workforce, is finding the workers to do the work that people are demanding, whether it's nurses or people in manufacturing or tradesmen. You know, you try to get a plumber these days. I heard about a plumber recently that there was a problem in the lawyer's basement. The plumber came, the lawyer said, "Can you fix my pipes?" The plumber fixed the pipes, gave the lawyer his bill, and the lawyer said, "I can't afford this." The plumber said, "I couldn't either when I was a lawyer." So the economy of the United States is doing amazingly well, and of Maine and of Lewiston Auburn. Just last week the beginning of this week, had a groundbreaking over in Lewiston for 82 units of housing. That's the other issue that we're up against. And coming in from the airport just now, saw the new housing in Auburn that's going up just a mile or so from here. So America is on the move. Maine is on the move. Lewiston Auburn is on the move. Why has this happened? I think the president may be listening now. He may think it has something to do with what he's done. I may think it has something to do with what we've done. The real answer is the Taylor Swift concert series. With what my daughter and her friends spent for Taylor Swift, the GDP, just did this. Actually, what's really happened is leadership at a lot of levels, from the top level all the way down, and you just heard from the mayor. What Mayor Levesque has done here in Auburn is really amazing on a whole lot of levels. So local leadership, in my experience, local leadership is really one of the most important factors in economic development, and business leadership from people like Kathy Leonard. I've known Kathy for probably 30 years, and what she has done here through tough times has really been amazing. So a lot of it is about leadership, but also policy matters. And the one message I want to really be sure I get through is that the vast majority of the work that we're doing in Washington right now, believe it or not, is bipartisan. We passed the annual defense bill last night, 86 to 11. If you add 86 and 11, you don't get 100. I don't know where, maybe they were taking a nap or something, but 86 to 11. The infrastructure bill that's made such a difference in Maine, for the airport here, for the airport in Portland, Bangor, roads, bridges, my favorite, broadband. Within the next year and a half, we're going to have broadband available virtually to every household in Maine, affordable broadband. And that's the critical infrastructure of the 21st century. So the infrastructure bill, bipartisan in both houses, is making a real difference. The CHIPS and Science Act, investments across the country that's bringing back high-tech manufacturing, again, bipartisan. The PACT Act, the most important veterans legislation in probably 50 years, again, passed with both parties working together. Isn't that a nice idea? Budget, no shutdowns, no defaults. That's really what this is all about. So, Mr. President, welcome to Maine. Welcome to Auburn. Welcome to Auburn Manufacturing. The United States of America is on the move, and so is Maine. Thank you.
Please welcome Governor Janet Mills.
Hey, let's see. Good afternoon, and hello, Auburn. I'm here to thank Kathy Leonard for hosting us here today and to welcome to Auburn, Maine, the President of the United States. Isn't that thrilling? I'm thrilled to welcome President Biden to Auburn Manufacturing to talk about how his policies and the innovation and ingenuity of our people are building a stronger, more prosperous Maine. Our state has had a long and proud history of making high-quality products used by people around the world. For example, as you know, generations of hardworking Maine people have harvested timber from our forests and harnessed the power of our rivers to create high-quality paper products and textiles. I grew up in the shadow of several paper mills in western Maine. My classmates built their lives around these good-paying jobs, and they lost more than a paycheck when those mills began to close. As one former mill worker put it, quote, losing the mill was losing a job, but it was also losing the status of a job. It's a job people look to. Losing that pride along with the relationships with everyone you worked with, that was one of the toughest things. In other words, as President Biden often says, a job is about more than just a paycheck. It's about dignity. When I took office, I knew that to bring back good-paying jobs and to grow our economy, we had to invest in our greatest asset, our people. And it's a belief I know that the President shares. Thanks to President Biden's leadership, including his historic investments in our state and the hard work of Maine people, we are creating good-paying jobs, and our economy is growing stronger every day. Maine's unemployment rate is at a record low. We have a near-record high number of jobs, and our GDP has grown at one of the best rates in the nation. New businesses are coming to Maine every day, and existing businesses are expanding. More than 1,800 manufacturing companies now employ more than 56,000 people in our state, exporting everything from aircraft parts, semiconductors, seafood, advanced forest products, and textiles made right here in Auburn, Maine, at Auburn Manufacturing. President Biden's American Rescue Plan has helped Auburn Manufacturing expand its production capacity. Now, Auburn Manufacturing's high-quality, extreme heat protection textiles and fabrics, crafted by 50 skilled Maine workers, are used every day across North America and in more than 30 other countries. We are incredibly proud of Kathy Leonard and her team here in Auburn. Thanks to President Biden and thanks to innovative Maine companies like this one, we are creating good manufacturing jobs once again. Jobs that Maine people can look up to, jobs that Maine people are proud of, that provide food for their families and provide support for their families and communities. I want to thank President Biden for his support of Auburn manufacturing, and I am so proud to welcome President Biden here today to learn more about the work that we've done with his support to bring back manufacturing jobs to Maine and build a stronger, more prosperous state. Thank you.
Hi, Brian and Amanda. Yeah, Governor Mills just spoke introducing President Biden, who is expected to take the podium at any moment now. And they are also signing an executive order here today. Really, the focus is on the economy. We're talking about manufacturing here at Auburn Manufacturing Incorporated. But again, we're going to just wait a moment for the president to come up on stage.
Welcome, everyone, and what a wonderful welcome to me. I really appreciate it. I'm Kathy Leonard, founder and president of Auburn Manufacturing. This is a huge day for us. Small companies like us just don't get the opportunity to introduce the president or to host the president of the United States. It doesn't happen. We've been making heat-resistant textiles for industry and defense for 43 years now. We started in Mechanic Falls with 2 people, I was one of them, and have expanded exponentially over time. We're now in 2 places. We have 2 plants, one in Mechanic Falls, one here in Auburn, which we're in. And we have now over 50 people, and we're on track to increase our workforce by another 30%. Growing a business, I know, finally. Growing a business, especially exponentially, isn't easy. We've experienced many challenges during those years. First of all, interest rates. They were 14% when we started building our first building. That's pretty high. Secondly, Chinese dumping of silica fabric, one of our major products, stole 30% of our domestic industry back by 2016. And that forced us to file an anti-dumping case against China, and it was successful, but very expensive. Then COVID hit, just as we were recovering from what we'd been through the last several years. That was a really difficult time for all of us. But President Biden's American Rescue Plan helped keep businesses like us afloat. It helped reignite the U.S. economy. That's the truth. His bipartisan infrastructure law got folks hired, rebuilding our roads, our bridges, our critical infrastructure, and helping businesses of all kinds. His Inflation Reduction Act and CHIPS and Science Act and his focus on American manufacturing has increased demand for U.S.-made products like ours. So, we're now back. We're growing our workforce again, we're entering new markets, and we're upgrading our plants and equipment. While our tagline, you can see over there, is innovation on fire. You know, we were really on the brink of about flaming out for a while. And it's now, it really is now, innovation reignited. So, but that's enough. You know, the Bidenomics agenda is helping make that happen for small U.S. manufacturers like us. But enough about us. It's now my distinct honor to introduce the President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Kathy, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And to the governor and the congressional delegation, the mayors, thank you, thank you, thank you. Governor Janet Mills, you're doing a great job for the people of Maine. And my good friend and great partner and a tireless fighter for good jobs, Senator Angus King, including right here in Auburn manufacturing. Representative Sherelle Pingree, champion of farmers and workers, the environment, and a great friend. Representative Jared Golden, whose greatest claim to fame is a beautiful wife and little daughter I just met. Independent voice of the people of Maine, served the district just like you served your country as a Marine, with integrity, honor, and fearlessness. Thank you. And by the way, he also fought hard for delivering funding on several airports in his district. I wonder how he got that money. You're doing a great job, pal. And thanks to the state legislature and local officials here today. And I know you've been hit hard by flooding, and our FEMA administrator, Griswold, has been working closely with you in terms of the ground teams that we have to get what you need. And we're not going away until everything's back, to build back better, not just build back to where it was, but better, because the environment's changed an awful lot. I'm here to talk to you about what we're doing to bring manufacturing back to America, about our progress in building an economy from the middle out, the bottom up, not the top down. Yesterday, we learned the economy grew faster than expected last quarter. And this morning, we saw data showing that last month, the annual rate of inflation continued to decline. So inflation is now at its lowest point in 2 years. And wages are up after being adjusted for inflation. When I came to office, I was determined to end the trickle-down economy. Excuse me, this little stand is out. Well, I'll make sure I don't trip over it. Maybe I stand up and make myself 3 inches taller. I came to office determined to move from a trickle-down economics that everyone from the Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal and it's called Bidenomics, with a plan that's working, building from the bottom up, middle out. Folks, you know, all the trickle-down stuff, when the wealthy do very well, we all do well. Well, my dad was an honorable man. My dad worked like the devil, a real gentleman. But not a whole lot ever trickled down on our kitchen table. If you're middle-class folks, I didn't get much. According to Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, it's leading to a boom in manufacturing, what we're doing. We've created over 13 million new jobs, more than before the pandemic. Nearly 28,700 here in Maine. Eight 800,000 new manufacturing jobs nationwide. We've attracted almost $500 billion in outside private investment to grow the economy because they know it's available now. That's more jobs in 2 years than created by any president in a 4-year term. Unemployment in America has been below 4% for the longest stretch in over 50 years. And it's not just that we've recovered all the jobs we lost during the pandemic. It's that we now have more jobs than we did before the pandemic. Because unemployment has been so low for so long, workers have been left behind for decades aren't just finding jobs, more jobs, they're finding better jobs with higher pay. And no wonder job satisfaction, according to all the measures, is at a 36-year high. A share of working-age Americans in the workforce is as high as it's been in 20 years, including during every single day my predecessor was president. Remember they were going to have that infrastructure week? Anyway, long story. People are coming off the sidelines. Unemployment is down, but so is inflation. Remember, the experts told me and told it all that to get inflation under control, and I love this as a middle-class guy, we had to lower wages and had to have higher unemployment. Only way to get inflation down. Maybe if we get the excess profits of corporate America down, we lower it. But I've never thought the problem was too many people or the working people were making too much money. We now know a big part of that reason for inflation was the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, broken supply chains, and excess profits. All hitting pocketbooks hard while padding corporate profits. By the way, I'm not against corporations. I come from the corporate capital of the world, Delaware. Well, seriously, more corporations incorporated in my state than every other state in the union combined. But they should pay their fair share. When the pandemic hit, all of a sudden we could get those little computer chips about the size of the tip of my little finger. Well, guess what? You need about 300 of them to build an automobile. Guess what? And I'll go on and on and on. We attracted over $300 billion in people coming to America to build those factories now, here in America. I decided we're never going to be in a position we're not the beginning of the supply chain. A phrase I don't think any of us really heard until 3 years ago. So we went to work, getting our economy back on track, fixing those supply chains. We made a lot of progress. Now, one reason we have inflation fall by 2/3 without losing jobs is that we're seeing corporate profits start to fall as well. We have more to do, but I like what I said. Inflation is now at the lowest point it's been in over 2 years. In fact, we have the lowest rate of inflation among the world's major economies. Every major economy in the world, our inflation rate is lower. We're growing faster. We're economically more advanced than every other major country in the world. It's down from 9% to 3%, and it's going to continue to go down. While there's more work ahead, earlier this week, the Washington Post suggested Republicans may have to find something else to criticize me for. Now that inflation is coming down. Maybe they'll decide to impeach me because it's coming down. I don't know. I love that one. Oh, anyway, it's another story. At the same time, pay for low-wage workers has grown at the fastest pace in over 2 decades, and wages are growing faster than inflation. That means an awful lot to working people where I come from. They have more money in their pockets than they did before. My dad used to say, at the end of the month, the question is, you just have a little, after you pay all your bills, you have just a little breathing room, a little breathing room, a little left over. Folks, that's Bidenomics. It's about growing the economy and strengthening the middle class, making things in America again. Under trickle-down economics, it didn't matter where companies made things as long as it helped their bottom line. Even if that meant jobs and supply chains moved overseas. What did most of these guys do? They decided to send the jobs overseas where the labor was cheaper and bring the product made back to the United States more expensive. Entire towns and communities got hollowed out, not just here in Maine, but all across America. This is not just for Maine, this is of all of America. Small towns and medium-sized towns all across America. Factories got shut down. All over the country, parents saying to their children, honey, I'm sorry, I lost my job. We can't live here anymore. You saw it here in Maine. Let me remind you of a few examples. Auburn and Lewistown, right next door, used to be home for some of the country's largest textile mills. Bates Manufacturing was the largest employer in Maine, with thousands of employees supplying the country with high-quality cloth and quilts. Bates Manufacturing survived the Civil War, the Great Depression, and 2 world wars. But in the 1990s, American textile production moved overseas. Bates closed shop, and by the way, my state used to be a gigantic producer of textiles, the DuPont Company. Same thing happened with Maine's iconic paper industry. The same thing happened. The industry lost 8,000 jobs over the past 2 decades as paper mills shut their doors. Take the Verzo mill, Bucksport, founded in 1829, provided generations of good jobs and up to 47% of the town's tax revenue. A decade ago, it closed, devastating the town, like so many thousands of towns all across America. Between 1990 and 2010, Maine lost nearly 45,000 manufacturing jobs. And like we saw across the country, once thriving cities and towns became shadows, what they used to be. When these towns were hollowed out, something else was lost as well. And I come from Northeast Pennsylvania and know about shutting down towns. Pride. Pride. People lost their pride, folks. This is what trickle-down economics looks like. But now we're turning things around. Since I took office, we've attracted over $500 billion in private investment in manufacturing in America. Industries of the future. We're seeing a factory boom. Spending on construction and manufacturing plants nearly doubled in the last 2 years, after growing only 2% under my predecessor in his 4-year term. The last quarter, factory construction contributed to more to the gross domestic product than it did any time in the last 40 years. Instead of exporting American jobs, we're creating American jobs and exporting American products again. That's how we make money. Like here at Auburn Manufacturing, you heard Kathy talk about starting this company 40 years ago, making advanced textiles that are fire and heat resistant. They weathered decades of economic storms. Now, with the help of the American Rescue Plan, they're having their biggest export year ever. The company's growing, and their products are made in America. Made in America. Not just here, but here, we're seeing a resurgence in Maine's paper industry as well. Under the previous administration, a mill in Westbrook, owned by Sappi North America, laid off 75 workers. Under my administration, they got a $1 million grant from the American Rescue Plan. They used it to invest in technology to improve pulp yields. Now they're expanding their business, creating hundreds of good-paying jobs. The Bucksport, the old Verso site, is now home of an aqua farming company that raises sustainable salmon. The town is beginning to boom again. And that's just the beginning. We're focused on growing the rural economy in Maine as well and all across the country. For example, under my administration, Maine has received millions of dollars to strengthen and expand access to small and mid-sized meat and poultry processing. Up to now, you had to go hundreds of miles, and you only had a few processors, and they gave you what they thought was necessary, not what your product was worth. Having these facilities close by means farmers have a better shot getting a fair price for their product. When those farmers do well, when the wealth they generate stays in Maine, when their children can stay in Maine, continue to farm, it builds a stronger rural economy. Building an economy from the bottom up and the middle out means small and mid-sized farmers, foresters, fishermen have a chance to succeed right here where they're from and don't want to leave. That's why we're providing funding to encourage companies to use resources harvested in Maine for new and innovative products. We're creating new markets for those products, like mass timber for use in tall buildings, or plant-based packaging materials, or sustainable aviation fuels. That's where it's going to come from. By the way, mark my words, the next 20 years, farmers are going to provide 95% of all the sustainable airline fuel. From product, we're helping fund renovations at the library at Bar Harbor or Portland Museum of Art using locally sourced mass timber. We have a grant to a company called Tan Bark and Saco to replace plastic packaging with packaging using wood fiber. Your kids turn on. How many of your kids come to you and say, "Mommy, I didn't realize all that plastic was killing all those things in the ocean," those ads you see. Well, because of what's going to happen here, it's not going to happen. Bio-based products are the future of Maine, and Maine is leading the way. Just last week, the National Climate Advisor was in Madison for the opening of Timber HP. A brand new company has turned shuttered paper mill into America's first wood fiber insulation factory produced with 100% clean energy, helping families save on energy bills and creating 140 new jobs. And I want to congratulate Governor Mills, who just yesterday signed legislation making Maine a leader in the offshore wind industry. It's a big deal. It is a big, big deal. Committing, and the federal government's doing the same, committing to 3 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2040, and which will create good-paying union jobs. I remember the Business Roundtable, the big businessmen, they said, why are you known as the most pro-labor senator in the history of America? Simple reason. Makes your products better and ultimately cheaper. You know, everybody thinks to become, for example, an electrician. You show up and say, I want to be an electrician. You got 5 years. 5 years you got to work before you can get a full salary and have the right to be out there as an electrician. It's like going back to college. 5 years. They're the best in the world. This kind of resurgence is part of my plan to invest in America, so our future, again, is made in America. Most people don't know there's been a law in the books since 1933, which means it's totally consistent with all trade laws that exist in the world. And that law says that when the federal government spends your tax dollars, it must be spent on American workers and products made in America. So, for example, when the Congress comes along and says we want to build new decks for aircraft carriers, for example, over the last so many years, I get $60 billion they vote to do things federally. Well, guess what? ain't doing any of it unless they build it in America by American workers. Because for the last 50 years, the vast majority of Democrats and Republicans did not insist on that. Did not. That's what I mean by made in America. Well, guess what? I'm insisting on it. That's why it's here. And by the way, it's good for everybody. It's not just good for labor, it's good for everybody. And today I'm going to sign an executive order called Invent It Here and Make It Here. It's here, it's just how it works. Federal agencies research and fund development to encourage innovation. This executive order dictates that those agencies have to prioritize domestic manufacturing when it comes time to bring those inventions to market. They can't go abroad, they have to look here. Who can do it here? That's the law, and we're just beginning to enforce it. Folks, we're not just making things in America, we're also buying America. I announced new standards to require construction materials used in federal infrastructure projects to be made in America. Lumber, glass, drywall, fiber optic cables, and more. Every federal infrastructure project will be built by American workers, using American products, creating American jobs. Folks know these international agencies rate all governments about their capacities. We used to be rated to have the #1 best infrastructure in the world. Now we're number 13. China used to be beyond 13, and now they're number 2 or 3. What's going on here? How can you have the best economy in the world and the 13th ranked infrastructure in the world? Through the bipartisan infrastructure law. Some of my Republicans crossed over and supported this. We've already announced over 37,000 projects in 4,500 communities. Remember we used to have Infrastructure Week in the last guy's administration? Now we got Infrastructure Decade. Because guess what? Guess what? It's $1,300 billion invested in America over the next 10 years. 1.5 billion invested right here in Maine so far. For example, we're cleaning up legacy pollution, Callahan Mine and the Superfund site in Brooksville. Maine is receiving $164 million to replace lead service lines and improve drinking water and address contaminants like PFAS. We're removing every single lead pipe in America. They're a risk to everyone's health, especially to our children with 400,000 school fountains have that lead in it. Right now, over 42,000 homes and small businesses across Maine don't have access to high-speed internet. We're investing $500 million in Maine to connect every single corner of the state, especially rural communities, to internet, affordable internet. And we're making it affordable, saving nearly 100,000 families $30 a month for their internet bills. We're making investments like this all across the country. You can see exactly where to go if you go to online to go to invest.com. Invest.com. Punch in wherever neighborhood you want to find out about. You'll see what we're doing. These investments are going to create thousands of jobs across the country. We're making sure workers have the skills they need to do these jobs. In Maine, the AFL-CIO is, with funding from the American Rescue Plan, just graduated its first cohort of its Union Construction Academy to bring unprecedented workers like women and people of color into the trades. The IBEW also with funding from the American Rescue Plan, runs a pre-apprenticeship program for high school students. And there's a training center in Newport. Folks, this matters. My Investing in the American agenda also has another transformative impact. Every single Republican in the Congress voted against the Inflation Reduction Act. That's the one that had a total of $659 billion for infrastructure, for the environment. over the next several years. You see, they don't think we have an environmental crisis. All this stuff happening is just temporary. They don't wonder about it anymore. You know, when the ocean off the state of Delaware, or off of Florida, is 102 degrees, something's going on. The vast majority of them voted against the infrastructure law as well. But that hasn't stopped them from claiming credit for where now billions of dollars and thousands of jobs are coming to their states. Well, like I said, the State of the Union, I'll see them at the groundbreaking. Folks, the distinguished senator from Alabama put out a release saying, Alabama is so low, I forget the exact number, is going to get $1,600,000,000 for such and such. He voted against it. He voted against it. I could go on, but I won't. But I made a commitment when I ran that I'd be president for everybody, whether they voted for me or against me. The vast majority of all this money is going into red states because they've been so badly hurt, a majority of it. I'm not picking winners and losers based on who they voted for. I'm picking winners and losers based on the need they have in their communities. Folks, let me close with this. I'm not here to declare victory on the economy. We have more work to do. We have a plan for turning things around. Bidenomics is just another way of saying restoring the American dream. 40 years of trickle-down economic limited that dream to the very top. But I believe every American willing to work should be able to get a job, no matter where they live in the heartland, small towns, the Northeast, big cities, to raise their kids in a good paycheck and keep their roots where they grew up. My dad used to have a saying. My dad was a well-read man, and his greatest regret was he never got to go to college, but a really decent, honorable man. And he used to, and I give my word, this is what he'd say, and all my siblings remember, and my friends. He'd say, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. That's what it's all about. That's what it's about. That's the American dream. If you're willing to work hard, you ought to be able to make it. Shouldn't be limited to just a few people. It's rooted in what's always worked best in this country. Investing in America. Investing in Americans. Because when we invest in our people, when we strengthen the middle class, we see stronger economic growth and everybody benefits. You know, we're making significant progress, and I want you to know we've done all this without raising taxes. And guess what? I commit that we'll never raise federal taxes on anybody making less than $400,000, period. Unlike and here's some of my friends on the other side, the MAGA Republicans, saying, big spend Biden's raising the deficit. Guess what? In the 4 years that the last guy was president, he raised the national debt by almost 40%. You know that $2 trillion tax cut? Raise your hand if you got any of it. $2 trillion, not a penny paid for. But guess what? In 2 years, I've cut the national debt by $1,700,000,000,000 while doing all of this. While doing all this. $1,700,000,000,000. Because when ordinary people are able to make a living, they buy things, they go out and do things, they're able to live. And it raises funding. It doesn't cut it. It doesn't cut the idea that we're going to have a bigger debt. For the longest time, I've been told to give up on American manufacturing. And some of you have been involved in American manufacturing. How many times have you been told? Well, we used to be the largest manufacturer in the world, but not anymore. We can't compete. Hell, we can't compete. There's nobody in the world we can't beat, let alone compete. I've never believed it, and we have the tools to change it. America used to lead the world in manufacturing, and we're doing it again. Folks, I can honestly say I've never been more optimistic about America's future. Now, I know it looks like I've only been around a couple days, but I've been around a long time. I've said that, and all my colleagues, and I think my former colleague in the Senate used to hear me say it, it's never, ever been a good bet to bet against the American people. Never, never, never. And it's a real bad bet to bet against us now. So, folks, I really mean this. We just have to remember who in God's name we are. We are the United States of America. And there's never been a single thing we've set our mind to in war or peace, when we've done it together, we haven't accomplished. Not one thing. That's who we are. Let's not forget that. There's nothing beyond our capacity if we work together like you're doing here in Maine. So God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you very much.